we're going to take a look at the lore to explore the concept of Norse Shamanic Healing. Hey, you beautiful heathen! I'm Matt Sargent. Welcome to Iowa's Initiations. Thanks for joining me. As I mentioned, we're going to take a look at magical healing traditions within the heathen paradigm. We're going to be exploring 3 different literary sources that gives us hints as to how the magical practitioner, the Vitki, the Völva, the Seidr, would practice healing. And I do want to emphasize real quick that I don't necessarily agree 100% that we should be calling these practitioners, which are all different arts in and of their own right, shaman or Norse shaman. That said, the term Norse shaman is something that everyone kind of has at least a vague idea of what that means. They don't really know what a Vitki or a Seidr, a Seidkona or a Völva, what that means, what they may or may not do. So while I try and avoid using umbrella terms, I use the term Norse shaman to simplify the message. I said 3 sources. We're going to be looking at Egil's saga, the Lochnuga, the 9-herb charm within the Lochnuga, and one of the 2 Mercerberg charms. When we look at Egil's saga, the brief bit that I want to talk about would be the part where Egil heals a farmer's daughter. And when he gets there and finds her sick in bed, under her bed, he finds a whalebone that has runes carved upon it. And he recognizes the runes, doesn't like what they say, carves them off, throws the carvings into the fire to burn off their remnants. And then he gets a piece of wood and carves a new batch of runes. And she heals. That's cool. Runes are used for healing. What runes did he use? We don't know. But remember that after we examine our other 2 sources, we can maybe extrapolate some information as to developing a healing practice of your own. In the Lochnuga, which is an Old English charm, we find the 9-herb charm, where Woden uses this 9-herb charm as well as some twigs to cure poison from a snake. And it starts with, a snake came a-crawling. It bit a man. Woden took 9 glory twigs, smote the serpent so that it flew into 9 parts. And then it goes into the 9 herbs, and for each herb there is a poem that you are supposed to recite 3 times while you prepare the herb, and then there are further instructions as to how to apply the salve. It's interesting to note, if you look at this written in Old English, it relies heavily on alliteration, which is a key element found in Galdrelog, which would be the Old Norse spell meter. Any poems written in the Poetic Edda, in the Eddas, that are found in Galdrelog are in specific examples of magic being happened. And it's considered to be the spell meter. If you want to learn more about Galdrelog, check out this video. Even though it's in Old English, not Icelandic, we see that same alliterative use for magic. That brings us right into the Mercerberg charm. And these are 2 charms that are written in High German. They're written far after, the Viking period, well into the Christian era. However, they refer to heathen gods. And it is the 2nd charm that is most interesting for us today. The first one deals with breaking a prisoner free of fetters. But in the 2nd charm, it refers to Odin, his wife Frigg, their son Balder, and 2 other goddesses who we don't see in other sources of the lore. But they're all out on a horse ride, and Balder's horse sprains its ankle. The goddesses all try their hand at healing. Nothing works. And then Odin himself gets involved, and he heals Balder's horse by chanting a spell. In English, the spell translates as bone sprain like blood sprain, like limb sprain. Bone to bone, blood to blood, limb to limb. Like they were glued. Even in English, we see a fair amount of alliteration in this poem. And in High German, there's even more alliteration. Again, bringing us back to Galdrelog, right? So we've got these 3 sources. How is the modern heathen, the modern Vitki, the modern Völva, the modern Seidr and Seidr. How are we supposed to use this to learn to improve our healing using magic? When we look at Egil Saga, we see that Egil carved runes into a piece of wood. We combine that with the 9 herb charms, and we see that Odin used 9 glory twigs. It does not say that Odin carved any runes upon these twigs, but it is highly suggested that those glory twigs at least had maybe the initials of each herb carved in runes onto those twigs to give them a boost in power, right? More than likely, Egil didn't just carve Feho or Laguz, which is often associated with healing. More than likely, he actually carved Galdrolog, a specific metered poem that relies heavily on alliteration to bring about the desired effects. And this Galdrolog, even though you may or may not carve it onto wood or glory twigs, maybe even bones, who knows, whatever you feel compelled to use with spirit, use the Galdrolog meter to activate your healing charm. Definitely journal what you do, write down your successes, your failures, rely on that Galdrolog, but don't just carve it, sing it. Sing the healing song. We know that a lot of mystical healing arts throughout the world rely heavily on sound. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows that sound is very powerful. Does this mean you have to learn Icelandic or High German or Old English? Because we see references to healing in all 3 of those languages. That to me says that it doesn't necessarily have to be a foreign or dead language to be healing, because at the time these were written, they were very much living languages. So use your language, use what speaks best to you, and sing it and release it to the multiverse in that form, with or without carving it. Remember to call in the spirits, as we see in the Laknunga. You're calling upon the spirits of the 9 herb charm to help aid in the healing. And you could even infer that in the Mercerberg charm, that like bone to bone, blood to blood, that you're calling on the individual spirit and the owned within that person's body to activate the healing potential.